Hey guys, what's up? I got everybody here from TMI. Don't forget to write us an email at tmipodcast2018. That's tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing. Also, check us out on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter at TMI underscore podcast 2018. Just use the numbers, don't spell it out.
Ooh, don't forget facebook.com/TMI podcast 2018.
Follow us on the Apple Podcast app. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review.
All you YouTubers out there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, TMI Podcast 2018. Look for the popcorn bucket.
That's right. Also, check us out on Spotify and the Google Play Music app for all you Android users. Follow us and subscribe everywhere. We appreciate it. We're doing it for you guys, the fans. Thank you.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Dave Odinson Warhowski, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
So welcome, everybody.
Yeah, we're back.
Yep, here we are.
I would just like to start, before we even get into this, by giving acknowledgement to our epic theme song. You know, that leads us in every week like the best cinematic trailer that you could ever think of. So shout out to our wayward teammate Dave out there for pulling that.
Dave, where are you?
Maybe more epic than we deserve, but epic nonetheless.
Epic.
It's Shark Week here on
Shark Week.
on
It is Shark Week.
It may not
Sharks
be Shark
galore.
Week on whatever. Is it Discovery
No.
Channel or Animal?
It's Discovery.
Okay, may not be Shark Week there right now, but
No, we're extending it. We're
Yeah.
carrying it over.
Yeah,
I hope you brought your shark repellent with you.
I've got my utility belt. Yeah,
Nice. Awesome.
It's probably placebo, but there is something that's
That's
not shark repellent.
I heard they don't like lima beans.
Really?
Make a scuba suit out of lima beans.
Yeah,
Will leave you
there's
alone.
not much that they don't like.
Apparently not. They eat everything.
So if you're wondering, it may be no surprise that our movie this week is The Meg, which if you didn't know anything about it and you're going into the theater, you might look at that title and say, what is this, a sequel to Girl Interrupted or something? So,
I find it funny that I think the book was just called Meg.
Yeah.
And the movie producers went out of their way to say, let's add a "the" to that.
Just in case anybody.
Do you think they focus group that?
You can actually get the book.
Yes, there is a book. I think there's a series of them. I could be wrong.
It's bad. I don't know. Are they still even in print? I think they came out in the 90s. The original.
I think. Well, this has been they've been talking about this for quite some time. So and we talked about this last week. This movie was actually completely wrapped in 2016. So it's been sitting on the shelf just waiting for all those dollars to roll in so they can make that nice big shark.
And I read something ridiculous that it cost almost as much to market this movie as it did to make it.
Yeah.
So,
well, we'll get into it, but I guess Jason Statham, who stars in this thing, was not too happy with the outcome of this movie because he signed on for a hard rated R gore fest. And that is not what this is at all. I think you see one severed limb. There was, for a shark movie, there's very little blood. And
if you want to compare to today's like hard R type movie like this, you just look at that reboot of Piranha, and that's right.
Well, this movie, it echoes so many of those, from Jaws down to Deep Blue Sea. You got a little Nemo homage going on there at one point. Waterworld, there definitely some shout
but I think it is smart on the studio's part to bring it to a PG-13 because you got all these kids that just go nuts over Shark Week. So you have a whole demographic that you're missing if you.
I had a fair amount of families and kids in my theater. So they were showing up in droves.
Now, Jeff, I just like to bring this up before we get into this, because you would know probably better than I. As part of an actual Shark Week, Discovery Channel put out a fake documentary at one point about the megalodon.
Yes. And that was crazy, because nowhere was it reported or acknowledged that this was a spoof. And it was just
premiered as, a regular Shark Week program.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. That was a couple years ago now. But yeah, they threw that out there, and it was just like, what the? Yeah, with footage. They had footage and everything. These boats. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Maybe that was all just one big lead into this movie.
It was, yeah. That's probably what sparked the idea.
It was part of the marketing budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was part of the 140 mil that they spent. Was that special? So yeah, from what I understand, this is an American Warner Brothers / Chinese production.
Yeah, China sunk some money into it, and I guess it did pretty well over there. They did their own marketing,
and it did very well this weekend. I don't know what the final numbers are, but it was projected on Friday to take in, I think, 40 million.
That's what I saw, something around those lines.
And they were projecting before it even opened, like about a 20 million weekend. So it did double what they expect, as far as I know, and it could even do more after today.
Right.
And it did, I think it was projected to do 90 million overseas.
Wow.
For this opening weekend?
Yeah, for this opening weekend.
So maybe, I read something that it had to clear like 400 million in order to get in the black. So hopefully it's on.
It is unbelievable.
There. I enjoyed it. It's not a great film. It's not a typical Jason Statham, punch fest either. I don't think he punches anything in this movie. He threatens a few times. So the setup is that it's the most tenuous of setups. It's a marine research lab that are breaking through this nebulous layer of frozen water to get down to this layer of the ocean where nobody has ever been before.
Or they could have just crashed in the bottom. It was all theorized.
Right.
Until they
they didn't. So they find this thing. It's kind of like the veil of fog around Skull Island and King Kong, but it's below the ocean. And they find this thing, and they want to get into it with their high-tech equipment. And a billionaire who's financing this whole thing, played by Rainn
Wilson, which is
from The Office, the American version of The Office, right? Provides the comic relief. So that's the setup. So the team goes through this cloud into the nether region of the ocean, and they stir the megalodon. It follows them out. When they are coming out of the cloud, it creates a pathway for the shark to follow them through. And that's basically the setup of the movie. So now this team has this shark to deal with.
So he survived underneath for billions of years, and that was the funny thing too, which is like it was so nonchalant. They go down there, they're celebrating. We discovered this whole new world underneath here, and then they're somehow shocked that there's something that they didn't expect. And the minute, so Statham's character Jonas is brought in. He's this diver you see at the beginning of the movie. He saved a bunch of guys that were in a submarine that crashed, and he actually claims that he had encountered this creature 5 years ago and was discredited. He ran away to Thailand and was basically a drunk sitting around listening to Thai. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my butt in Thai. And they bring him back because the research vessel gets attacked, and it's his ex-wife is now trapped at the bottom of the ocean. And so they bring him back to save her and the other two. The one gentleman, I think his name was, they called him The Wall.
The Wall, yeah.
The Wall. And then the other one was Hero from Heroes. Yatta!
Yeah. Maybe because he had a lot of CDs, and they nicknamed him The Wall based on the old CD store chain.
But yeah, so right off the bat, this hit way too close to home because my ex-wife is also named Lori, and I left her at the bottom of the ocean as well. So.
So this raises a point. So we assume that Jason Statham, you never see the megalodon in the.
Nobody knows immediately what it is.
When he's in that scene 5 years before, where he's rescuing part of the rescue mission with the first sub, and then you see the hull of the sub being crushed in by something outside.
Right.
So you're just led to believe throughout the rest of the movie that was a megalodon. But how could it be if it didn't come out of the prehistoric netherworld of the
until they actually reached it? There's a couple questions going on here in this movie. I think you liked it better than I did, Jim.
You think so?
It's enjoyable, but it doesn't know what it wants to do with itself. It doesn't know if it wants to make fun of these type of movies or take itself seriously. I mean, the main character Jonas is thrown from one stupid situation to the other, and even he like questions everything. He's like the audience. He's like, this is the craziest thing I've ever done. Yeah, that's stupid. Why would you do it? But he does it. There's just one ridiculous setup after another.
Character's name, the obvious,
Well, Jonas, right?
Yeah, Jonas and the whale. Yeah.
I was sort of hoping for like a big budget Sharknado, and
well, that's just it. Either you go that route or you take it seriously, and it was somewhere in between. Sharknado would have been cool.
Yeah, it didn't find it was taking itself a little bit too seriously for what I was looking for, I think.
Yeah. I got that. I think this would have been infinitely cooler if we would just replace the Megalodon with the Mosasaurus from Jurassic World.
And it would have been infinitely bigger than the Megalodon.
Well, that's the other thing, too, which is it just seemed to me that the scale of this thing changed from scene to scene.
It did, to suit the scene. It did, because especially the scene where it was going into the shallows where the swimmers were.
Correct.
Like what they set up previously could never fit comfortably in those waters.
And again, they go out of their way to say, oh, if you're just a single person in the ocean, this thing is so big, it's not going to bother you. And yet, time and again, went out of its way to hunt down one single person floating in the water. Yeah. And now it goes up to the beach, and there's thousands of people there. And you're like, why would it just not lift itself out of the water and open its mouth? Yeah. It's like a whale eating plankton.
That's what I wanted to have happen.
Yes, right. And Jim, you brought up piranha too. That whole setup is exactly the chaos in the water when the piranhas are attacking, and it's just pure blood everywhere. And this was so bloodless. It was and a little fat kid. You're like, oh, he's got Kittner Kid written all over him, and he lived. He didn't die. Even a little dog.
And he didn't even drop his popsicle.
No, that got a big laugh in my theater. At the end, he's still there floating.
But you know what? You guys having said all that, the most implausible thing for me in this movie was that Jason Statham for 5 years is living as a bum on this island, and he's still ripped and cut.
Right.
Completely.
Oh, does he have it in his contract that he has to be shirtless at least once in a movie?
It's like, I would have loved it if he just had like a beer belly through the whole movie, and it was scratching himself all the time, and
right. He had that 5 o'clock shadow going, man. I will tell you, last week you were going on about Aubrey Joseph's voice. Jason Statham can read the phone book to me. Yeah.
I love it how he informs us. It's a megalodon.
Well, that's just it. I'm saying this thing has been, everyone believes these things have been extinct for 2 million years, and he's like, it's a megalodon. It's a megalodon. And everyone's like, you're right. Like nobody's like, holy, we're a research vessel. Well, the doctor.
I think you guys are taking this too much to task. This movie. You gotta go in thinking like, okay, this is not going to be great, but I'm just going to sit here.
I went with it, but it's after the fact. I'm just starting to kind of like think this stuff through, and so 3/4 of the so there is no really bad guy, but Heller is the doctor that discredited Jonas and basically shunned him in exile, told him he was crazy. The little girl calls him crazy throughout the whole movie. She doesn't even know his name.
Yeah.
She calls him crazy. And all I kept thinking of is, man, Matthew Modine got fat. And then I realized at the end credits, it's not even Matthew Modine. Some guy named
You thought that was Heller?
I thought that was Matthew Modine. Yeah.
And I don't know what his deal was, Heller, because
well, that's just it. He just was.
Did he want everybody else to die? Is that what
it didn't make
situation was?
There were some. It finally gets loose, and they're seeing SOS from like 3 different ships. Oh, this thing's eating boats. Let's go chase it in a boat.
Yeah.
Okay.
No sense.
Okay.
Did you have a favorite scene in the movie?
Favorite scene? Yeah, I did like it when he was they sent him out by himself, tethered, to put a tracker on the shark's fin as it's swimming around. And now it's chasing him, and the boat's in high gear, and he's full on Kevin Costner Waterworld as his own bait trying to remember that scene in Waterworld where he catches the fish? That's exactly what that was. I did like the Naboo fighter ships that they had underwater there, though.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was very...
the gliders.
Episode 1.
Yeah, even his little air regulator looked like Qui-Gon Jinn's.
But that scene, not only did it bring up flashbacks of Waterworld, but also For Your Eyes Only. Remember that classic scene where Roger Moore and the Bond lady there get tied together and dragged behind the boat?
Yep.
So right. And of course that was the big Nemo joke as well when he was in the water by himself.
Just swimming.
And,
Well, I will tell you, my favorite part of the whole movie was Ruby Rose. She's something to look at. Did you know she was just cast as Batwoman?
No.
Yeah, and then immediately quit Twitter because nerds behaving badly had to rip into this.
Was Ruby
casting.
Rose the one? With
She was the tattooed girl,
the tattooed
with the spiked hair
with the
that
spiked
somehow
hair.
magically became spiked again, even though she was drenched in water for hours on end.
And now at one point, one of the other characters asked what happened to her hair. And her hair, there was nothing different about her.
No, I don't know. That made no sense.
So yeah, I was looking every scene she was in. I was looking at her hair, like, is there something going on there?
I thought she was mesmerizing. I was actually, I thought she was something to look at, man.
So are you saying the star of this movie was her hair?
And the tattoos.
And the tattoos.
See, I like the scene where they did the tease where you think that they've killed the shark. And obviously, it's too early in the movie for this to be over.
Yeah, and they somehow hoisted this thing up onto the ship so they can all take pictures with it.
And then in a scene almost right out of the original Jaws, the true megalodon, the big one, comes out of the water to eat the other one that got killed on the deck of the boat, lands on top of the boat in a scene that was very reminiscent of the very final scene from Jaws when Bruce comes out of the water and lands on the orca.
That was the only scene that really surprised me, like where I was just like shocked with it because
you were waiting for something.
Yeah, because the guy was just taking a picture, and you're kind of like, we're waiting for like the Jaws to snap his head off or something like that, and then that happens, and I was like, whoa!
And then he gets eaten. So that guy, the wall, and so Toshi's the letter to his family never made it, I guess.
Yeah, no.
Because I think it was in his pocket. Oh no, he handed it to Heller. I think it doesn't matter.
Because they did set that up kind of nicely because the wall was in the water earlier, so you're convinced he's going to get eaten, and then he makes it out, and then he goes back in, and that's when
that might have been. There's no real jump scare moments in this, but that might have been the closest. Where you're waiting for something to happen, you know something's going to happen. And so then when the larger one comes, it's just kind of...
Yeah. And Jeff, I was almost convinced that as a classic feature, you were going to pick Jaws 3, otherwise known as Jaws 3D. Because that had a very similar...
Well, the underwater...
It wasn't in the middle of the ocean, but it had in the SeaWorld setup.
Yeah.
Where you had underwater tunnels and everything else that the shark gets to attack, and which it did here. And I'm surprised that it did not break through. That would have been a good...
That would have been because
down that whole
light, and the whole thing was like illuminated. So why not just eat into it?
They did establish that when Su-Yin was in that polycarbonate plastic cage that they...
Oh, you mean the giant pill that went right down his throat?
Right.
That cage was, come on. It's a freaking 70-foot giant monster. Put you in a shark cage. Can't be crushed. Yeah, but you could be swallowed.
Yeah, they had to do it though. They had to go there. You couldn't have that movie without a shark cage. So.
I guess not. Jonas at one point literally saves every single person individually. Like he goes out of his way to dive down and save her as she's in this cage. It's now plummeting to the ocean floor, and he saves her. And then you get there's nothing I hate worse than bad CPR in a movie, because they try and revive her, and it's like, what happened to hands-free CPR? No, we go right in for blowing her mouth and pretend we're pressing on her chest.
Yeah, well, it was two rescuer CPR, if you notice.
One
was doing the compressions, one was doing the...
If you want to call those compressions. Yeah. So Rainn Wilson's character, Morris, who is the billionaire, finally decides, all right, you know what? Like, cause at first he was like, we're going to jump on this. We're going to make millions off this thing. And they're like, we got people dead here. And then all of a sudden he did like this 360 and he's like, okay, I called in the Chinese government and they're going to come. Everybody knows about it now and we're going to get off. And he had some secret agenda that he was going to go out and kill it by himself.
Yes, because he was avoiding the lawsuits.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So he wanted to get rid of the evidence. So they had these depth charges they send out in the helicopters, and they're just dropping it on this thing, and boom, we drop it to it, and we kill it, or we think we kill it.
No, that I think may have been my second favorite scene in the movie, where Rainn Wilson gets it, where he's clutching onto the dead whale carcass that's floating there. And the megalodon takes a bite, just misses him. And he's like laughing and saying, woo, he made it. And you think, well, maybe he is going to make it to the end. And bam, then he gets another bite gets taken with him in it. Kind of gave you the impression that it left his hand there.
I got
clutching the whale carcass. So maybe, instance 2 of gore, bloodless gore. Would it have been an improved film, do you think, if they had blood in it?
I don't know. I mean, I got the impression, based on this interview I read with Statham, that it was, would they come out with an R version on the disc when it's released? I don't know.
I don't know that I would have enjoyed it more. I think that there was that opportunity, certainly when, everyone was at the beach in their inner tubes and stuff like that, to just go to town.
Carnage. Carnage.
And they just didn't do it. And that would have, saved the movie for me for an odd reason. That sounds like a serial killer talking.
Right. If more Chinese people had died, it would have been great.
But if you think about it, probably Jaws itself, a PG-rated movie, had more blood in it than this movie did.
Yeah.
If you don't count like the chum and the dead whale carcass.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing too, which is like, all right, this thing's already swimming around hungry, so let's just chum the water. And it kind of raises the point where the Motion Picture Association of America, their ratings board system, was a lot more tolerant, I guess, in the past than it is now, because stuff that you'd see in a PG-13 movie today would easily be in a PG movie years ago. I didn't hear much swearing in this. No, there really wasn't. No, as far as volume, as far as language, there really wasn't anything. So, looking back on it, I don't even think that it was worthy of a PG-13 rating. I think this would have been PG, like back in my childhood, easily. Yeah. It wouldn't have had to cut anything to change this from an R to a PG. It would have been PG from the get-go. I think that we're less tolerant as a society. You see, you get the social comment on TMI. You don't expect this, do you? Especially, with the Meg. But there you go. Are we ready to dismiss this and give it its popcorn buckets now? Or
yeah, I don't think I have anything to add here.
No.
Anything else, Jeff, before we...
No, watch Deep Blue Sea instead, if you want to see it.
Or if you really want to be grossed out, watch Piranha with
Piranha. No, and that I enjoyed that. Yeah, that's a great. But you're right; it's a gore fest. It is
a little bit gratuitous. I didn't need to see the floating penis and the one.
That's PG-13 right there.
I would give the Meg solid 3 popcorn buckets. Solid 3. I enjoyed it. Wasn't great, and I'm not saying it was, but it was an enjoyable hour and a half, hour 40 minutes, whatever it was.
I'm gonna go with 3 as well. I mean, it's a popcorn movie, and I had popcorn, and I had the movie, and so I was satisfied.
That is true. I did.
And you had nobody, there was no irritants in the theater whatsoever for you, Mike.
No, I was alone in the movie theater. It was me. It was just me.
All right, it's me. Boy, I want to give it 2.5. I'm not even going 3.
2.5.
Yeah. All right. John Turteltaub, who was the director, he said he wanted to make the second greatest shark movie. I don't think he succeeded.
That's a fair assessment. I would say that this is not the second greatest shark movie either.
No.
That would fall to Jaws too.
Yeah.
Well, but this is a dinosaur movie.
It is. This may not even qualify as a shark.
They did. You know what? That is true, because they did keep referring to it as a prehistoric fish.
Yes. Now, we were going to have a guest today, Jeff's daughter, Sky, who is a big shark enthusiast. Now, I'm curious what she thought about it. Did she
enjoyed it? She did enjoy it. The problem is that I realize I can't sit in a movie theater with my child because she's a little too much like me, and we tend to riff on things. And I just become that guy in the theater that you hate, because now she's like texting me and showing me pictures, and I'm just like, all right, we got to stop. We're not home. We're not sitting in front of the television. We're in the movie theater. Let's put on our movie etiquette. But yeah, she did enjoy it. She definitely enjoyed it more than I did. And as soon as we left the theater, I'm trying to gather my thoughts, and she's throwing out stuff. Yeah, so some of these observations were hers as well. I think we'll get into it, because I think our confessional deals with the end of this movie, so we can talk about some of that stuff.
We'll revisit it in a few.
The only other thing I'll bring up, which is a missed opportunity for the world's largest shark fin soup at the end there. Yeah.
And it was, I liked the demise of the Megalodon at the end, where it was just other sharks that ended up bringing it down.
Well, yeah. So it's like, all right, he's got this damaged ship, Naboo fighter, flying around, is chasing him left, and there's coral reefs left and right, and all of a sudden he's deep ocean, and then he's back. It made no sense, but it was like a missile that couldn't launch on the side.
Yeah, he did.
Right? Yeah. So you're like, all right. He makes this speech about, all right, it's not about the people you say or you lost, but the people you save. Everyone else is safe up on the other ship. So you're like, he's going to just ram it right down his throat. That's what you do. You just ram it right down your throat and you blow up that missile. No, that's not what he does. He basically disembowels it.
Yeah.
Like it just does this cutting 90-degree turn and just right down the middle eviscerates it. And then he has to go on to Moby Dick and then stab it in the eye. That was actually maybe one of my favorite scenes. That was kind of,
because it looks at him before.
And he never wears flippers. He doesn't wear flippers, and you're like barely has goggles on. He's just living in the water. He's like the fish guy in Waterworld,
or Mr. Limpet,
which actually plays into my confession.
So I think we smell popcorn, right? Do we?
I do.
Attention, please. A $50 reward will be paid for information leading to the arrest and conviction of anyone caught stealing our speakers. If you accidentally pull a speaker loose, don't worry. Just turn it in. There is no charge, and we'd appreciate it.
So this brings us into our classic feature, and classic it is. Weird.
So last week I misspoke because I said it was 63. It's really 64. So speaking of, so I want to ask Mike straight up. Did you watch this?
Jeff, no, I did not, but I watched the trailer.
Now, Mike, had you seen this before?
I had seen this before.
Okay, yeah.
And you knew he didn't want to watch it again.
That's right. That is absolutely right. I did not like it as a child, and I knew that I would not like it as an adult.
Well, I will say that, you know, part of these classic features is to share movies, I guess, that we have experiences with. This movie will always remind me of my Aunt Caroline. She had a ceramic cookie jar that was shaped like a fish, and she had painted glasses on it to look like Mr. Limpet.
Does that still exist?
I don't know. I don't know if that even...
You just made a boring movie sound more boring.
Well, I will tell you, it had to. So Jim brought up the 1964. It came out in January, and the world premiere was the world's first and only underwater premiere because they did it at Wiki Wachi Springs.
Wachi, yeah. There's a little bonus feature on the disc.
I looked it up. I found it on YouTube, but then I did see it on the DVD, and I looked it up because I'm like, oh, this is like straight up like a '60s kind of. It's still in existence, this state park, and they have underwater mermaids. You go into like this amphitheater, and these girls dressed as mermaids do all these underwater acrobatics. And so what they did is they had the world premiere there. They brought down a screen in the water and showed the movie.
So Mike, this for you, this may be the only way that you would probably go to see this movie.
What would you see it underwater? Would you see it with a fish?
I don't think I would.
No. So obviously what we're talking about, if you haven't caught on yet, is The Incredible Mr. Limpet, starring Don Knotts from 63, 64. So let's get into it. I had actually never seen this before. It's one of those things where I was convinced I had just because it's so ingrained in the pop culture that when watching it, I'm like, this is not familiar to me whatsoever. So I knew of it, obviously, probably throughout my entire childhood and adult life, but I'd never actually seen it. So I was surprised that it's, kind of a jingoistic World War II set movie that kind of uses Don Knotts and his cartoon character as a secret agent for the U.S. government during World War II to kill Nazis.
Yeah, that's a little heavy-handed when you put it like that, but that's exactly what it is. Yeah. And he goes out of his way to kill Nazis.
So it is, to Mike's point, it is very talky for like a kid family type movie. Even though Harrison did watch it, he watched the whole thing with me and seemed to enjoy it. But as I was watching, I'm like, wow, this drags. This could have at least, 20, 25 minutes cut out of this.
And it's not that long of a movie anyway.
No, it's not. It's not. So my first question is, okay, so we're introduced to Henry Limpet, who is Don Knotts, the main character, as this kind of milquetoast kind of guy.
Milquetoast is exactly what he is.
Who's very much hammered on by his wife all the time, and this guy George. Now I wasn't sure who George was.
There were some weird things going on because at one point, so George is a sailor. And he's on liberty, which I guess is what they called on leave.
Yeah.
For the weekend. George is going to spend the weekend with us, but he never went away. Like he just ended up like George wanted to get on with Bessie in the worst way.
At first I thought he was Henry's brother-in-law. Like Bessie's like at first, why is he there? Like maybe that's her brother.
They brought up there was a conversation later after he disappears and becomes a fish where George is mentioning something. He goes, oh, but this was before Hen. Remember when we used to go dancing? Remember when we used to do this? So yeah, I don't know. Is he an old boyfriend? He definitely was trying to get in the middle of them.
Yeah, and you're introduced to him. He kind of hides behind the front door when Henry comes in,
and he calls him Hen.
Deviously, So
yeah, no, there was
this guy right from the back.
No, and there was a couple times where, like he mentions his top secret mission. I can't really talk about it, Hen. And he mentions the Virgin Islands, and then he looks at Don Knotts like, you're a virgin.
Yeah.
It's just, Henry had no interest. Like he was just browbeat by this woman. Why did she even marry him? Because she was a bully. But right. So he's obsessed with fish. And she's just like, that's all he talks about. If I was a fish, he would look at me like that. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, it was a little much because he even had in the water cooler, the fish. And it's like, dude, don't you realize that fish poop in the water?
Yeah.
You put it in the water cooler.
Put it in the water cooler at work, yeah. Give the water a kind of ambiance, like putting in some lemon, yeah.
So I think I'd want to be a fish too if I was berated by this woman on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's what else did he have to hang on to? That's all he had.
Yeah. So all it took was one, I wish I were a fish. And he even sang that song. And then lo and behold, he falls into Coney Island and turns into a cartoon fish. And we're off and running.
And yeah.
We're off and running.
And from there, through various circumstances, he reconnects with George, who becomes his liaison for the U.S. government.
Right. So you see in when he's human that he just wants to be a part of the effort. This is before we got involved in Pearl Harbor. So it's like 1941, I think. It's like to build up. You see the newspaper reports of allies and all this stuff, but the U.S. is not part of the war. And he wants it, and he just keeps getting rejected. So immediately he turns into a fish, and he thinks, I can now help the Navy. So he reaches out, and he contacts one of the Navy ships, and he requests that George come out and meet him. George Stickle. Stickle, not pickle.
Kind of accept after a while that he is a fish, especially after he starts sinking Nazi subs.
Yes. And those Nazis, they like to label everything, right? Like everything in the Nazi headquarters had a swastika on it. Even in the submarine, the periscope it's like, they were
it's like Batman, the Batcave.
Well, it's like the annoying roommate who gets a P-Touch label maker and it's like, this is mine.
And I enjoyed that they actually had the Germans speak German in this movie rather than
Colonel Klink.
Das Limpet?
Limpet.
Das Limpet? So when he becomes a fish, he meets the crab, whose name is Krusty. So there's your original Krusty Krab.
Krusty the crustacean crab.
Krusty the crustacean.
Yeah.
And then
voiced by Paul Frees, the classic Disney voiceover guy.
Yeah.
Who does things from the Haunted Man. Like pretty much any classic ride in Disney World, Disneyland, is voiced by Paul Frees.
Really? And then he refers to him as Flatbush because that's where he came from, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But Ladyfish, so he meets this girl, Ladyfish. He saves her because she's on a hook, and she's got to be like the dirtiest little fish out there because, man, she immediately wanted to spawn.
She's care that
he saved me. Let's go. Right. Yeah. Well, she didn't even understand the concept of marriage. Oh, and we forgot so they refer to him after a while as a secret weapon. And what I didn't remember was that the whole movie is like a flashback because at the beginning you see George and he's now like an admiral or something. He's got gray hair and they're going into the top secret department and they're bringing out Henry's file. He's been MIA since 45 or something. And now they got to go back. So the story all unfolds of how he became the fish and how he became the super secret weapon. And at the end, you see them back in the water trying to contact him again because there have been some dubious activities with him training porpoises.
Yeah, so I didn't get that. Like, whether they wanted him to train porpoises or he was training porpoises. Yeah.
Yeah, you never really got that. But after a while, it was like a giant game of Battleship where he was just, he had this throng, this echo voice that he could throw. And that's when they would start screaming, Das Limpet! And so they designed these missiles that actually honed in on this sound. And so he just realized, well, if I do it in front of the Nazi ship, the U-boat will blow up. Yeah, lots of Nazis died in this one.
Talking about how the Meg was bloodless. This really had to be because it was 1963. Yeah. So it was kind of as detached from humanity dying as it could be, blowing up.
They were just little toy U-boats.
Even though they were Nazis.
Correct.
So I couldn't get any box office info on this. I assumed it was a hit.
Well, you know what? It bombed when it first came out.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, they re-released it. And then I guess over the years it's kind of become a bit of a cult classic. But yeah, I guess initially it did not do well. One
interesting tidbit is that a big deal was made in 1968 over its CBS television debut, which goes to show how, hard up, I guess, people were for entertainment.
That's probably where I saw it.
Yeah. So you may have seen this, Jeff, if you looked at the DVD, if you saw that the underwater premiere thing, it also had the original trailer, the DVD that I had, and it had this guy named Arthur Godfrey who introduced the trailer. And he said, "My name is Arthur Godfrey. I'm a personality on CBS radio." I guess he was a news announcer.
Oh, yes.
And he goes, I just saw this great family flick that I really want you to see, The Incredible Mr.
Limpet.
Yes, I did see that. And then he goes on to say that, it's got these 4 great new songs.
Right there. That's right.
He takes out a record and he says, this is all part of the trailer. And he's like, this is I Wish I Was a Fish. And we've got a great children's chorus singing on it. And he puts it on the turntable and he plays it. and it's him, the DJ, singing the song with this children's chorus in the background. So it's like the self-serving, sort of less about the movie than it is about this guy from CBS. It's not even in the movie. So I thought that was really bizarre, especially if I were in the theater in 1963 or 64 to see this guy come up. So yeah, I thought it was a nice tie-in, and I enjoyed it. So not to equate it with the Meg, they're two totally different viewing experiences, but I think I would give Das Limpet 3 popcorn buckets.
Das Limpet? Yeah, I go 3. I might go a little higher. I might go 3.5. I do enjoy it. And I'm sorry I subjected Mike.
You tried to.
I did.
Tried to. Yeah, you can't subject him to anything.
That's true. I was convinced you really were going to watch and review Orca, because afterwards I realized that probably would have been a better selection. And it's celebrating its 40th anniversary. Bo Derek was in that.
Do such films celebrate anniversaries?
I don't know.
Is somebody putting that out on Blu-ray? I wonder if it already is.
That's a good question. Yeah. But it did come out in 78.
I seem to think that was also a very slow-moving film as well.
It's a brutal film.
All I remember is Bo Derek's leg being eaten off.
Yeah, that she was in a cast.
She was in like the houseboat or something, and then it knocks down the houseboat and gets her leg.
I will say the most horrific part for me was the opening where they actually capture the female, which sets the male in motion.
The revenge.
And the baby pops out onto the deck, and they just power wash it back into the ocean.
They're just like... Yeah.
Because it's like a squeal. It's like a slow. It comes out in slow motion, almost like the chest burster from Alien, and it's squealing. I just remember that being very horrific. And what's funny, well, not funny, but in the news just last week, there was a talk. There was an orca that its calf had passed away, and it was carrying it around for like 3 weeks.
Oh, really?
So this movie plays up the notion that they're very intelligent and that it was seeking revenge. And so after seeing it, you're like, well, maybe there's something to it. They are called the wolves of the sea.
Yeah, total Dino De Laurentiis type. I don't want to say ripoff. Maybe that's too strong of a word for Jaws.
No, they were definitely channeling that.
Did he? And we also had a discussion over our text chain that this was an orca. Not that orca should be derailing the incredible Mr. Limpet right now, but it has. That orca was a very popular back cover ad for a lot of Marvel comics back circa 1977, 78, whenever it came out.
So they knew what the audience was.
Yeah,
they were catering to us.
And I seem to remember that same year, not only was Orca a big comic advertised movie, but so was The Island of Dr. Moreau, if you remember those ads.
I don't remember those ads.
Oh, I do. I don't know if that was also a De Laurentiis production, Dr. Moreau. The original, of course, not the Marlon Brando travesty, Val Kilmer. But the old Michael York version. Maybe we should bring that one back as well.
Maybe.
So out of your memory, Mike, would you even bother to give Mr. Limpet popcorn buckets just from your childhood memories?
Empty bucket.
Yeah, I think so. It's a 0 bucket for me.
It would be like the oily dregs, the empty bucket.
I can't wait to see what Mike's selection. Oh no! Is it your pick this week, Jim?
Will Mike be with us? We're unsure next week.
No, I will not be with you guys next week. So I will be traveling, and I have passed on my pick. So it's to you, Jim. I think.
That's me. Yes, but before we do that, let's not forget our confessional.
Confessionals.
So was this Sky's suggestion?
This was Sky's, yeah.
Jeff's daughter's suggestion, who is errant this week. She was going to be with us, but she is not. So the confessional, Jeff, is...
how would you have dealt with the Meg? How would you have taken him out?
Now, do we have any solid ideas for this? Could we have been any help to Jason Statham?
I probably would have been, to be honest with you. I would have been nowhere near that water. I'd still be inside that research facility. You're not getting me out of here. I'm in the bathroom.
So who's the first one to take a shot at this? Do we have any ideas?
So my idea was, because I think it's much more interesting sort of, to capture this alive, which is, going to be the hardest thing in the world to do. But after he's satiated himself on the inflatables by the beach in China, I would have dropped a big shark net and see if I could have just I mean, what's the point of having a dead shark? I mean, what does that do?
Who's to say they're not more under there?
Well, that's a point. So that was my really poor idea, was capture alive.
And then perhaps build like some kind of a containment around it.
Yeah, that's where you start your theme park.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Right there, wherever it is. Yeah,
that's Jurassic World.
See, now bringing some more social comment into this episode. What I would try to do is kind of lead the Meg to that floating pile of plastic garbage that's in the middle of the ocean. And kind of try to, to keep having it swim through that. And, like Mike was saying with the plankton idea, to gobble up all that stuff. So it would do two things. It would get rid of that floating pile of garbage in the middle of the ocean and kill the Meg all at once.
Nice. Well, I have a practical and I have an impractical. So at one point, they have depth charges that they're just dropping on this thing. And they think they kill it, but it was a whale. Why not just stick a depth charge in a giant piece of meat and let it eat it and then just blow it up? So that's the practical. Impractical, I'd bring in Das Limpet and have him throwing it to death.
Now, I would watch that.
And may I, that reminds me is that, may I point out, in the Meg, we didn't point this out before, that the Meg brutally kills the baby whale trying
yes, that was in front of the little girl too, by the way.
Bumping its nose against the glass of the underwater facility, but yet the dog lives at the end.
Yeah, well,
he can't kill that little poodle dog. It was swimming there for the last 3 hours of the movie.
And meanwhile, the lady's screaming, "You ruined my wedding!" And it's like, no, the giant shark ruined
the Meg ruined your wedding.
So, do you want to know how Jonas kills the shark in the book? Because it's vastly different. From what I understand, he gets swallowed, and then he makes his way to its heart and severs its artery with his teeth. Which I would have loved. That would have been hardcore.
And then does he survive? Does he get out?
I don't know. You just crawl your way out.
Does he do like a Drax the Destroyer and cuts his way out?
We may have to make a book club out of this.
Yeah, talk about Jonas and the whale. Literally, there you go.
So I don't know. I'm assuming he survived in the book.
The book. Why not? If you're gonna have him inside chewing the heart out of the shark, you got to have him survive. You've already gone past any plausibility.
That is some hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
like Will Smith walking away from the alien ship that's crashed from 10,000 miles,
Right. That's how we do things on Earth. So, Das Limpet would have taken
Das Limpet.
Das Limpet.
He would have got the job done. Okay, so next week's episode, we're taking another recent Blu-ray release and reviewing it. So maybe a lot more of our listeners out there have seen this already. Ready Player One.
I'm actually very excited. I have not seen this yet.
Yeah, and we're gonna tackle it.
I'm excited.
And as Mike said, it was his pick this week, but since he will not be here, it's kind of turned over to me. Again, I'm trying to think of a movie that would go well with our main feature, Ready Player One. The obvious would be Tron, and I didn't want to go there, because I think anybody would have, that's their go-to for a video gaming, virtual reality type movie is Tron. So I tried to go a little bit deeper into the annals of filmdom, and I made it to 1995. And I would like to pull, because I haven't seen this since its original release, Strange Days. If you guys remember that, Ray Fiennes, Juliette Lewis, James Cameron script, and Catherine Bigelow directing. So they record memories onto this device which you wear. It's very much like a recent episode of Black Mirror, actually, which they ripped this concept off. So Strange Days is my pick. Okay. And from your silence, I'm judging you guys have no opinion one way or the other.
No, I
I've never heard of it or seen it.
Really?
I'm sure I've seen it, but I would be hard pressed to give you any details.
Now, at the time, the big draw of this movie was Ray Fiennes himself, because he was just coming off of Schindler's List. And I don't know if he won the Oscar, but I know he was nominated for Schindler's List. So this was his first movie as kind of like the star. So that was probably the big draw back in 1995. And I don't think it got much due. It may have had a lot of competition. We will find out next week.
Okay.
And
I thought you were going to go Iron Giant.
Yeah, no, it is. This is a hard R, so it's not a family film.
I'll shun
there you go. Strange Days.
I did have one little snippet of news that we skipped over. It's not a household name, but this guy, Doug Grinstaff, he's a 5-time Emmy winner for sound effects, passed away. And he created all the original sound effects for Star Trek, the TV series. So every one of those iconic flip of the tricorder or transporter or the doors opening, he created. So I just wanted to give a shout out to him and say, Scotty, wanted to beam up. There you go.
Rest in peace.
So, gentlemen, with that,
yes.
Das Limpet.
Das Limpet.
Das Limpet. Das Limpet.
you next week. Bye.
It's Megalodon.